In subparagraph D, as
Without
inserted.
objection, the amendment is considered as read, and the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes on his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today's bill requires DHS to investigate the immigration status of any person who agrees to care for an unaccompanied child who is released from the custody of Health and Human Services. It also requires DHS to deport any person who is unlawfully present. My amendment would strike this provision from the bill. If it's included, it will result in many children languishing in federal custody for months or years. It would make families who could be reunited and give their children a home reluctant to come forward, and could put other siblings who may or not be U.S. citizens at risk of being placed in foster care. According to the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, tracking nearly 400 cases where they were involved in placing unaccompanied minors with parents or close relatives, in more than half of those cases, nearly 60%, there was at least one U.S. citizen child in the home. So here's the choice you are making families make. Give a home to their traumatized, smuggled, refugee child who just crossed Mexico to get to the United States and risk being deported, and therefore leaving their U.S. citizen child or children without parents, possibly placed in foster care. These are the choices you are making impossible for good, decent people who are raising families in the United States. Furthermore, because immigration cases can take months, years to work their way through the backlog immigration courts, this will mean that thousands of children will languish in federal custody for long periods of time. Now, Mr. Chairman, I was a school teacher, elementary school teacher, and I'm a dad and I'm a grandparent of a 14-year-old. And before that, I was a social worker with the Department of Children and Family Services in the state of Illinois. So I'm not an amateur when it comes to child welfare issues, both as a teacher and as a former social worker. And according to federal law, the standard for welfare of the child is to place them in the least restrictive, most family-like setting possible. Further, government, quote, must consider giving preference to placement with a fit and willing adult relative. The Trafficking Victims Protection Reauthorization Act requires the Department of Homeland Security to place a minor with a suitable family member as a priority over foster care. The family member under existing law who sponsors the child undergoes a home study by HHS to determine if the placement with them will meet the needs of the child. But apparently the majority feels that being a fit parent, being a reliable adult guardian, and having a visa are synonymous. Well, let me tell you something about parents, about Latino parents, and about immigrant and refugee parents. For any member of Congress to insinuate that immigration status determines one's fitness to care for, nurture, raise a child, well, has never met an immigrant refugee family. It's outrageous insult to say that your visa status determines your fitness for parenthood. Secondly, it is self-defeating as stewards of the taxpayers' money to demand that we hold children indefinitely and create barriers to them being placed in the least restrictive, most nurturing environment possible, which, of course, is first with parents. Think about it. We know parents will provide the best care, the most love, and do the best they can. They may not be always what the majority believes. Yet this bill seeks to make it harder for that family to reunite and survive. And I'm just bring my experience, Mr. Chairman, to members as a school teacher, an elementary school teacher, and a social worker. I used to go before the court every day and prepare family studies when I had times that I had to take protective custody of children. And the first thing that judge would ask me, did you find a grandparent, Mr. Gutiérrez? Did you find an aunt or an uncle so they can be with their first cousins? Which in many cases, we all know we grow up, our first cousins are like our other brothers and sisters. Those were the first questions they would always ask me. And as a elementary school teacher, anytime there was a problem and I called the family together, the first thing I looked for were grandparents, aunts and uncles. That's people with family ties. That's what we do. It's not only what the law says we should do, It's what the best practices for children. Let's not treat children seeking refuge in the United States any differently and put them in any less of a protective setting than we put our own children. Because you all remember that the Pope came to visit us and he said, follow the golden rule. You know, like do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In this case, do unto other children as you would have them do unto your own children. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chair thanks the gentleman and recognizes himself in opposition to the amendment. When an unaccompanied alien minor is apprehended by law,